That would be awesome. If you're not, you can turn it off and listen. And if we have any questions that come up, we would really like them to put in the chat, and then we will address them when everybody is done their presentation. And if any questions come out after, send them to us and we will send them off by email and get you a response as quickly as possible. And so here we go. Our first guest, Mr. Paul Gauthier, who has been on our housing sessions a few times and always brings wonderful information. So Paul, welcome. We're all yours.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you to your team for having us here. I'm really honored to be part of this panel. And what's amazing is this panel, I know them all. And other than Joshua, I haven't met Joshua before, but all of the topics that we're discussing today is so important for families. And I'm so excited that you have pulled this group together. You know, I know for myself, my personal experience, finding access to information had been a challenge as I was growing up. When I was turning 19, I was living in well, first of all, I grew up in a foster home setting and grew up in the whole foster care system until I was about 13 years old. And then I moved into the group home world as a teenager. And then I was turning 19 and all of a sudden getting 24-hour support, 7 days a week, 3 or 4 staff people around me all the time in the group home setting. And then all of a sudden I turned 19 and I fall off a cliff, basically. At age 19, you know, I was told I was going to get 4 hours a day of home care, and that's all I was going to get. And that's when I really realized that, you know, the system was going to be a challenge. And for families and for myself as a person with a disability, it's been about advocating for ourselves and being able to understand how it all works. And so being here today where you get all the information in front of you and have people at this panel that you can ask questions to, take advantage of that. Let me tell you, take advantage of that. You've got great people here, and let's do that. You know, for me, yeah, I was honored in 1994 to be part of the Ministry of Health in developing the Choices and Support for Independent Living, the CESO program. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about that today, as I normally do, because you have Rod here that's going to talk about the CESO program. But I am going to talk a bit about what the Individualized Funding Resource Center can do to support people on the CESO program. I'm going to talk a little bit about the there's an association of CESO employers. I'm on the executive of them, and I founded the IFRC in 2014. I'm somebody that happens to have cerebral palsy, and myself personally, I need all aspects of support, from my personal care to going to the washroom to helping me eat. But I also need support in regards to being able to be out in the community and to be able to access my community. So the Individualized Funding Resource Center is really committed to providing supports which allow individuals to fully participate in their community. The IFRC's experienced and knowledgeable staff teams up with you to create a plan to achieve your goals. So we're not just involved in the CESO program, but we're very now involved in the individualized fundings of the CLBC program as well. And the Resource Center has become a real place where people could come and brainstorm, have access to resources and information. Navigating programs, you know, we've been told by individuals that the CESO program or individualized funding for CLBC there's just so much to it, it's daunting. You know, people are saying that they just don't have the business preparation in being able to go onto the program. Not enough resources to be able to find caregivers, be able to manage the funding. Well, my team has come together. I teamed up with Chris Hoffley And we developed a team of people from from an HR department to payroll departments. And we have navigators that help people be able to move through the systems. We are able to help people with the application aspect of the CECL program, creating budgets and creating ways to be able to be successful with the program. And we provide education directly to individuals and their family. So knowing and understanding how BC employment standards work, WorkSafe BC, being able to have, what are the ins and outs of that? And, as a person with a disability, when I entered onto this program myself, I didn't have that business knowledge. And not everyone has that information. And having a place to go to be able to get that was real key. We also help with appeals and mediation as well. We've really teamed up well with health authorities around trying to understand how it all works. Rod McDonald has been an extraordinary leader in his health authority in looking at recognizing that not everyone is going to see eye to eye on the supports. And we teamed up with Rod in regards to looking at a mediation process. Instead of having to go through a whole appeal process and go through the patient care quality office, we looked at another way, and that was what we called a mediation process, where we actually got a chance where individuals with disabilities or their families could come and meet directly with Rod to actually look at the situation and try and review everything and do it in a team approach, an informative approach. The CECL program has allowed people to be able to go to work, school, be able to travel. I became a Paralympic athlete and had an opportunity to go around the world. If I didn't have the funds come directly to me, I wouldn't have been able to find the caregivers that were going to help me be successful in my life. From the CLBC side of things, we are able to provide services from in the way of individualized funding and being able to provide access to caregivers. We have where we can help find caregivers. They don't become our caregivers. We can actually help people be able to find caregivers if they have their own individualized funding program. We also do host agency supports, outreach support, home share, homemaker, skill development, community inclusion. Individualized funding enables adults to use money allocated by CLBC to create new innovative services options and to make individual choices about how supports and services are provided. We've been really a leader in regards to trying to come up with new ways to be able to creatively utilize funding, coming up with different models. Taking a home share and being able to do a reverse home shares, looking at being able to do live-in positions, flat rate live-in positions and bringing those ideas to the table, trying to be able to utilize the employment standards laws, but being able to do it in a way that is creative and stays within the boundaries of the systems. So what I really want to talk about now is the Right Fit program. And, this is a multi-partner service to address the crisis in wheelchair accessible housing by matching affordable, accessible homes and independent living supports with people who need them in Metro Vancouver. As we all know, there's a housing crisis around affordability and being able to access accessible housing. Wheelchair users want to live independent lives with affordable accommodations, and that has been a challenge. I know for me, when I was moving out of the group home setting, that was the most difficult part, is where was I going to live? Never mind my supports and home care and all those things, but where was I going to live? People with disabilities who use wheelchair wait years for accessible, affordable housing. People that have come to us said that they've been on the wait list for over 5, 10, even 15 years and haven't been able to get access to it. There's many people that have come to us and said, I'm living in a institution because of the fact I can't find an accessible home. They're often forced to live in, many people that are living in the community now, as you know, may be in a home that's not accessible. And to us, this is what we consider the invisible homelessness. And it's true. If you can't access the washroom, if you can't access parts of your home, this really is a form of homelessness. The key challenge is the aspect of being able to find the home, but it's also the real issue is around the affordability side. And we've talked about this before in these meetings about the real need to be able to have subsidized housing available, and subsidized housing available attached to the individual. And this is something that we, as the part of the Right Fit program, are continuing to work with government to try to look at implementing further. The Right Fit does have 10 rental supplements that they've been able to provide to 10 individuals, and has made a huge difference in being able to go out into the market to be able to find an accessible home. I want to say that this partnership that we've had, the individualized funding with the Disability Alliance BC, has had an incredible group of people that have been coming together, from BC Housing to the Ministry of Social Development, Vancouver Coastal Health and the Fraser Health Authority, the City of Vancouver, Spinal Cord Injury BC, and the Vancouver Resource Society. And our funding comes from the Reaching Home Homelessness Initiative, which is a federal fund, and the City of Vancouver's Renters Office, as well as BC Housing. The Right Fit was created in response to this crisis. And we need to ensure that every accessible unit that is out there goes to someone who really needs it. As some of you know, there are wheelchair accessible units that have able-bodied people in the units. And it's because the housing providers told us that they couldn't find somebody in a wheelchair who could really use that unit. This is why we decided that it was important for us to be able to work closely with housing providers and be able to have a checklist where we could see what was available on the market. So when a unit does become available, we do a checklist where we actually check the width of the door, find out if it has a roll-in shower or a bathtub, look in the kitchen to determine the different aspects of the kitchen. We have a peer navigation model approach, and the peer-to-peer support has been critical in building trust and learning about an individual situation, assisting individuals to identify where they want to live, the kind of amenities that is important to them, their social network, assisting individuals complete application forms to BC Housing, reviewing available units and matching them with individuals that can utilize all the accessibility features, assisting applicants to gather necessary documents for housing providers and be able to support those in preparing them for the interview process. We don't make the decisions about who goes into a particular unit. We definitely look at the aspects of who is in highest need, and we present those individuals to the housing provider. But as you know, each of the housing providers have their own eligibilities, but we assist in that process. The Right Fit navigators are individuals with disabilities, supporting other people with disabilities. We have access to fast tracking of equipment and devices. We work closely with the health authorities and the occupational therapists, but the Ministry of Social Development recognizes the importance because of the fact that when a housing unit becomes available, it's only available for a short period of time because of the high demand for a unit. So having access, if somebody is on PWD, being able to get a commode chair so that you can access the shower, or maybe it's an electric bed, or maybe it's a ceiling track lift. These are the kind of equipment and devices that we can get fast tracked through the Ministry of Social Development. And they've come up with a very good system to be able to do that. We're working with the health authorities in regards to cross boundaries, you know, someone wanting to move from Fraser Health to Vancouver Coastal or vice versa. We have open communications with the health authorities to be able to help make this a more seamless process. Is it seamless? Well, it's much better than it was because we have individuals at the table that are working together and wanting to work collaboratively. So eligibility. So to be eligible for the Right Fit program, you do have to be a full-time power or manual wheelchair user, living currently in the Vancouver Coastal Health or Fraser Health Authority. Program right now, the focus is the Metro Vancouver area, but we are looking to expand to other regions. The ministries are interested in it going across the province. There is no age requirements, and PWD eligibility is not required to be part of the program. So we do keep track of all units that are accessible. So it's from full market to subsidized units as well. IFRC currently, at the Right Fit program currently has 118 individuals that are looking for places at this point. But I'm proud to say that the IFRC has made, the Right Fit, excuse me, has made 70 matches to date. So 70 people, 33 individuals with disabilities that are single tenancy, and 37 families with at least one person with a disability. So we've really made an impact in this aspect and in a way that we're trying to be creative. Have we resolved everything? Absolutely not. But the fact that we have a team working together and collaboratively on all levels of the government, you know, from the federal to provincial and to the health authorities, tells us that we're working in the right direction. And by a team effort is the way to really move forward. I look forward later to answering any questions around the Right Fit program. I did want to mention that we also have a wonderful partnership with Technology for Living, which Ian and Taylor are part of, called the Pathways to Independence. In 2018, you know, we started this collaborative approach where we would get together once a month. We have 12 meetings a year where individuals come together across the province. And, you know, this is the one good thing that came out of this pandemic, is that we all started to utilize technology that allows us to be able to get together easier, just like Ben and Rachel have done here, in being able to pull together individuals. There are people that are now able to participate that didn't used to be able to participate before because of their situation. So what we have going now is meaningful topics of concerns and interests that relate to independent living. So sometimes we talk about the CECL program. We talk about CLBC. We talk about assistive technology resources, financial, estate planning. We've had many discussions about the pandemic and getting access to resources. We had advocate organizations. Guest speakers and engaged peers have created a vibrant culture of community support and initiatives. So this is, you know, open to individuals with disabilities, their families, or their legal representatives. So you're welcome to join us. We send out information every month, letting you know what that topic is going to be. And Ian, Taylor, and myself meet on a regular basis to think through what would be best to be discussed at the next one based on what peers are telling us. I look forward to discussions later. And again, Ben and Rachel, thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks, Paul. I hope everybody can see what's happening here, how all these groups are linked together, right? And so that's super cool that we've been able to line up all four of you tonight. So thank you very much, Paul. And so like I said earlier, if you got questions, and we'll get to them at the end, just throw them in the chat, please. That'd be the best way. And we'll put the resources from each group as they come in as well. So I think Paul introduced Rod quite a bit in that last part. And so Rod McDonald, we'll pass it off to you. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rod McDonald. I'm a manager of Fraser Health Authority. I manage 4 different programs, one of which is the Cecil program, which Paul has been speaking eloquently about. And so we're going to focus in a little bit of detail about the Cecil program per se. So I'll just ask if we can pull up the PowerPoint presentation. I seem to have a bit of a cold, so I'm sniffing and coughing a bit. So I ask your pardon for that.
That's okay. Rachel's just putting that point up right now.
So I'll just start off while she's doing that. So the Choice and Supports for Independent Living program is a Ministry of Health program. So it's available provincially. Okay, here we go. So Rachel, I'll tell you when to move to the next slide, okay? Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna just quickly go through it and speak a little bit about a detail about how the program works. So the bottom line is Cecil is an alternative form of personal care. That's how the Ministry of Health has created the program as an alternative form of home support, personal care, that sort of thing. But it's personal care in a way that gives people with disabilities and others a lot more control, freedom, independence, and control, over their lives. And we'll get into the details. Next slide, please. So it's an alternate form of home support. And there's some language in the eligibility that we'll talk a little bit about. High physical care needs, a physical disability, and stable medical status. So it's considered an alternative, in the ministry way of seeing things, it's considered an alternate to home support, but not necessarily an alternative to assisted living or residential care. Next slide. So there's a familiar face. So basically what happens is the health authority sets the direction for the program at the policy level and downloads the responsibility for running the day-to-day operations of the program to the health authorities. The Ministry of Health creates the policy level, and then the health authorities run the program. Next slide. So the health authorities determine the amount of funding that goes. We're just going to use the language client, the Cecil client, or a Cecil employer, whatever you like. And in general, broad terms, we have to ensure that the services provided through Cecil meet the needs of the person specifically. And we also are involved with making sure that any quality of care concerns are being addressed as part of the Cecil program. Next slide. There's a couple of orange lines across my screen. I don't know if it's my computer or someone else's, but that's okay. So
I'm just trying to figure out how to fix that. I'm not sure how that happened.
It's okay. So the Cecil employer, it's an interesting relationship to the health authority, because you start off technically as a client of the health authority. But when you become a CECL employer, you're effectively a contractor. You're a contracted service provider of the health authority as well. So you kind of have two roles, two relationships to the health authority, and that can be a bit muddy or gray sometimes for people. And that's why I put a lot of emphasis on clarifying that. So when you become a CECL employer, I, as the manager, authorize a certain amount of funding every month that goes to you. And then in a CECL account, which you set up, it's all meant to be quite independent. And there's a whole process of orientation and helping people get started. Whoops, we lost our slides. And then I'll just keep going. And then you are involved in hiring your own staff. So you hire them, you schedule them based on when you want them. And you supervise the care, which is essentially to yourself. So you're like a contracted provider providing services to yourself. Like every other employer in BC, you've got to abide by Canada Revenue Agency, WorkSafe BC, and the BC Employment Standards Act. And then there's all the policies that come with the CECL program and the CECL contract requirements. So like any contract, there are contract requirements. Most of those are fairly routine. Recently, there's been a couple of clauses that were causing concerns, and there's been high-level dialogue that I think, Paul, you were involved with the ministry to help clarify and make that language better. And then there's different ways to be a CECL employer, and if the option for your services are involved what's called a client support group, it then also has to undertake tax responsibilities for corporations as opposed under the Canada Income Tax Act. So we'll talk a bit more about that. Next slide. Oh, sorry, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so there is a certain amount of work that goes into being a CECL employer. So we refer everyone to the Ministry of Health content on the CECL program on the BC Spinal Cord Injury website. That's kind of like a starting point to learn more about how CECL works and what's involved. Next slide. Eligibility. I'll talk a little bit about this. Part of it is a little bit technical. So the ADL long form score, that's the activities of daily living. That's within something called the RIE assessment. Some people might be familiar with that. The RIE assessment is a research tool that is both, it's used worldwide, and it's got, it's considered to have a very high research and clinical use validity and reliability. So it measures kind of the needs that people have, and it's an interview process. And the activity of daily living, it's, you know, after the staff person from the health authority puts in all the answers that they receive when they interview the CECL candidate, the RIE assessment spits out a bunch of scores. So the ADL long form score of 6 or higher, the ADL long form score is between 0 and 28, I think. So 6 is quite low. So from that level, it's a pretty low threshold. Maple of 3 or higher, that's kind of a mid-range score. Those are highly technical things. We don't really need to go into those too deeply. They tend not to be too much of a barrier. But the other thing too is that we just got to make sure that the person can safely coordinate and manage the CECL services. If they're doing it for themselves, if there's going to be a client support group or a representative acting as the CECL employer. So the health authority's response for determining eligibility laid down in policy by the Ministry of Health, and then allocating appropriate funding based on, well, we have now, within the last year or so, each health authority had its own way of counting the number of monthly hours that a person would be funded for, but counting those needs, hourly need or daily, monthly hours of need. And the whole goal is we now have counts the province so that people don't have a very different experience in one part of the province than another. So next slide, please. So in terms of eligibility language, high physical care needs. So basically what we're talking about is daily needs for personal care, maybe more than once a day, sometimes unscheduled needs, a need for assistance with more complex tasks. The person really needs a consistent pool of trained staff. And we're wanting to help people stay in their communities, their natural communities, stay connected to the people that they care about. And we also want to avoid the need for admission to long-term care facilities, etc. Next slide. Physical disability, basically that's broadly defined as something that limits a person's physical functioning, mobility, dexterity, and stamina, results in the need for personal care, is associated with a functional challenge or impairment beyond a person's normal way of living day to day. Next slide. The physical disability may be, again, congenital or inherited, based in a variety of origins, temporary or permanent, treatable or non-treatable, static or progressive. So that's fairly broad. Next slide. And, it's just a general statement that most people who want to become CECL employers or be a part of the CECL program tend to have longer term physical disabilities that they'll want support for. And although the diagnosis itself is not necessarily a physical disability, it comes down to, well, that's functionality. So that's, healthcare speak. So, that they're needing assistance with personal care. Next slide. So the CECL program isn't necessarily conceived of by the ministry or sort of visualized as primarily a dementia program. But cognitive impairment doesn't prevent people from being a part of CECL, but they just need to also meet some of the eligibility criteria that I've already just discussed. Next slide. And medically stable just means that when the person is coming on to CECL or applying for CECL, that their health status is such that we can accurately assess what's going on with the person, and that we can sort of understand what their care needs are going to be, and that the CECL contract itself will be able to be successful. Now, of course, we just need a baseline amount of stability there to get things going. But if someone's health deteriorates or becomes less stable over time after they become a CECL employer, that's not a problem per se, as long as we're able to, let the CECL keep the CECL contract services functioning. Next slide. So there's 3 types of CECL contracts. So phase 1 is where I, as a CECL employer, manage all my responsibilities to organize my personal care services. Client support group is like a micro board. We're a small group of dedicated individuals, act essentially as a nonprofit on behalf of the individual receiving services. And that can be very helpful for someone who does have a cognitive impairment, like a brain injury or dementia. And then the third is a representative manages, so through a representation agreement, that the legal authority is there to assist with organizing the CECL. So those are the 3 different ways that we can set that up. And that can change. Like, for example, I work with a certain amount of child and youth services as well. And, what we like to do, or process we do occasionally use, is that when someone is 18, because CECL is for people 19 and older, when people are 18, what we want to do is meet with the family at least 6 months before, and then we can look at getting a representation agreement in place for that young person, so that someone who cares about them and knows them can get the ball rolling for the CECL, so that when they turn 19 on the day of their first birthday, I can drop in the CECL funding in their bank account and get that rolling, because someone under the age of 19 cannot sign a legal contract like Cecil. So that's the challenge. But then once we get over that age change into adult services and everything's settled, if the young person would like to and is capable of it, then we can revert to a phase 1 where they can manage their own Cecil. We just want to make sure that people get over that hurdle of turning 19 with a minimum of challenge. And Paul and I have done a bit of work together on that challenge. And anyone who turns 19 and goes from child and youth services to adult services in healthcare, I liken it to falling off a cliff as well. And there's a variety of issues, and I've seen that no matter what part of healthcare I've worked in. So we're just trying to come up with innovative solutions on how to make that work. So next slide. Applications could take up to 6 months to complete. What that means is that if you're accepted into Cecil, the Ministry of Health contract gives you 6 months to get yourself organized and get the Cecil running. If after 6 months that has not happened, then technically speaking, the application is considered to have lapsed, and then you have to restart the application process. Now, there's a couple of different things there. Sometimes what happens is people are accepted into Cecil, but then something will happen, and they may go to hospital or something like that. And it's a process of good faith. So we've extended that. I think I've extended it to 9 months just because of circumstance. But there are other times where people love the idea of Cecil, but when they see the amount of work that's involved with it, they become it can be a bit intimidating. And maybe they struggle a bit trying to find appropriate employees and whatnot, or their enthusiasm may change. And so, they have to make a decision whether or not Cecil is still right for them. It's not so much the health authority saying, we're not going to grant you the Cecil. It's about, is it the right fit? Now that you have a better sense of what's actually involved with Cecil and the workload, maybe it's not what you originally thought it was, and maybe it's not the right idea after all. One of the challenges would be if home support could be appropriate, if you kind of need, there's no guideline about this, but you kind of need a certain amount of funded hours every month in order to make the Cecil work. Like if you get, just for the sake of discussion, if you only have an hour of personal care needs per day, say 30 hours a month, well, it's hard to hire someone for that. And it's hard to meet your obligations to the Employment Standards Act because you got to have a minimum shift of 2 hours. So it's just practical things like that sometimes can be a bit of a challenge. So of course, if a person's already receiving home support, which typically they are, then of course that service stays in place while we get the Cecil up and running. Next slide. So there's a whole process in place. There's a Cecil employer information package. There's a Ministry of Health Cecil allowable expense guidelines. So it basically tells you what you can spend and how much you can spend in each area. And then we also go through a Cecil agreement sample, and we give people a sample of like a monthly financial sheet for them to fill in to help them see what's involved and orient to what it's in a real world sort of way as to what they're going to have to do every month, because you have to report your financials every month and things like that. So next slide. Yeah, I won't go into this too much. Basically, once you're up and running and you've done your initial sort of orientation to get things going, then our contracts, we work closely with our Fraser Health Contracts Department. Every health authority does. And then they'll send out the contract to you for signing, and then you return it to the health authority. Right now it's all paper, but I'm happy to say that Fraser Health has got a new contract management office. And one of my big goals is that we would do all of this contract work and submissions electronically moving into the future. That's the goal, to make it even more accessible for people, because all this passing back and forth in paper is very time consuming. And, you know, in Fraser Health, what we want to do is radically reduce the amount of time from your acceptance into CECL between that time and the time where I drop dollars into your bank account. We want to, it can take 2 or 3 months typically, just because of all the details that have to get it sorted out. But, you know, if we can make that fast, then the sooner we can get that running, then the sooner you'll get your services up and going. Next slide. And that's basically it in a nutshell. I try not to put in too much, although there's a bit of detail tonight. So that's it for me, Ben.
That's great, Rod. We've got some questions in there, but we'll get to them at the end of the presentations. I did get a message. Is the slide deck available to share or not? Rod?
Oh, me?
Yeah, are we able to share the slide presentation?
Oh, yeah, you can give that to anybody.
Okay, yeah, so we'll send that out when we do our post
And
email.
I'm just going to type in my email address and my phone number in case people want to reach out to me. I'm seeing some questions from other parts of the province. CECL
cool.
is not just for the Lower Mainland, it's for all of BC, okay?
Nice. Lots of folks like to hear that. Anyways, Rod, great. And
Okay.
get to your questions after we wrap up. So thank you very much. So next we have Ian Price and Taylor Danielson from Technology for Living. And I got to tell you, Rachel and I heard about them and saw them, but when they came onto our housing auctions, we were mind blown. So it was really cool having these guys on. And yeah, so take it away, Ian and Taylor, and thank you very much for coming, guys.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm glad to be here with many friends like Paul and Ian, of course, my coworker and friend. And this is my first time meeting Rod, but his name is all over my CECL contract. So I think he might as well be a friend at this point. So I'm going to start sharing my screen with all of you, and we'll get this show started. All right, can we all see that? Have I done this correctly?
Yes, you have.
I have 1 sec, please, while I just sort out. There we go. Okay. So, I guess I've already said it, but thank you for having us. It's great to be here with all of you, whether you're a person with a disability yourself or a family member to a person with a disability. Being here means you care, and that's awesome.
So my name is Ian Price. I'm the innovation strategist at Technology for Living, and my job is, well, essentially testing out all of the new and exciting technology that we bring to our members.
And my name is Taylor Danielson. I'm our community coordinator. I do all kinds of things, but I help mostly with our community outreach programs, like the Pathways to Independence, as Paul mentioned. That's a very successful partnership between our two organizations, which I love being a part of. And I also do many of these speaking engagements here with Ian.
So for those that don't know, Technology for Living has 3 major programs, one of which is a Provincial Respiratory Outreach Program, or PROP. The next one is, thank you, Taylor, Technology for Independent Living, TIL, and that's where Taylor and I work, and also our peer support, where Taylor and I also work.
And it should be noted that we are a province-wide organization. So no matter where you are in BC, we're here to support you.
So I'm gonna briefly touch upon PROP right now. I think it's important to know that we provide a wide variety of respiratory equipment that includes BiPAPs, ventilators, humidifiers, cough assist, suction units, and nebulizers. So our PrEP program has a 24-hour hotline, education from our RTs, and we also do annual visits or visits as needed to make sure that all of our PrEP members are taken care of. This is just a quick image here about some of our members using their respiratory equipment, doing recreational activities, including traveling.
And maybe Ian's feeling a bit shy tonight, but that's Ian Price right there in the center. And this is in Italy, right, Ian?
It is, yeah, you
Right.
nailed it.
So, yeah, so Ian's traveling the world with his ventilator, and he's having a blast. He's been all over the place. So tonight we're really here to talk to you about our Technology for Independent Living program. And as Ian said, this is where my heart is and where Ian's heart is. We love the technology, and that's what we're here to talk about. So our Technology for Independent Living program is member driven. And what I mean by that is that we work with you as an individual. We realize that everybody's different. We might have the same disability or kind of ability, but you are your own person. So I know Ian and we have the same condition, spinal muscular atrophy, but what works for Ian does not necessarily work for me. So we work with you on an individual level to find what works. What we do is we provide assistive technologies and home automation devices, which we'll get into in detail shortly. We support over 700 members across the entirety of BC, and that's amazing. I love meeting with our members and talking with them and hearing their stories, and it's the best part of my day when I get to meet somebody new and learn about them and help them with their technology. And I think one of the biggest selling points is that there are no costs for our services. That goes for PrEP, our TIL program, and peer support. No cost. It's all free. We've just celebrated our 52nd year, I think now, which is amazing to be part of an organization with such a long history. So are you eligible? How do we define eligibility for our programs? It's very simple. You are 19 plus, you live at home, and to be clear on the home aspect, this is your private residence. For example, a house, apartment, or a long-term care facility or assisted care facility that is not currently providing you with assistive technology through their own programs. So we recognize that how you define home can be different, and it's not always the same for everybody. We also require that you have some form of limited mobility. So we work with people with physical disabilities. And you live in the province of British Columbia. As we see in this next slide, I told you a little bit of a lie. We've also recently started recruiting youths to our program. Ian has been working hard at this youth assistive technology program, which is opening our services to people ages 12 to 18. I think we're working with 50 youths this year and hoping to continue expanding the youth assistive technology program to reach more and more youth across the province.
Okay, so what's next? The first part is the application. You can find our online application on our website, and I believe there's a link in the description here. Thank you, Ben. And then after your application has been completed and approved, then we do a assessment, and this can be an in-person assessment, or more often nowadays would be a virtual assessment similar to this. After that, when we'll decide on what equipment will be most beneficial, then we either send a technician or a biomed to your home to set everything up, or if you prefer, we can do a virtual installation where one of our technicians will work with you step by step through Zoom. And after everything is all done, follow-up is really important. The last thing we want is for this equipment to not be used or not to be used to its fullest potential. So this is really important to us. And it is good to note that if you find that the equipment that we provided isn't working for you, let's say 6 months or a year or maybe 5 years later, then we're more than happy to do another assessment, send you new equipment, and then follow up thereafter.
All right, so we're going to get into the fun stuff very shortly, but before we get into that, we're going to talk about how we control all of this assistive equipment, because if you can't control it, what's the point really? And we have all kinds of different control methods for whatever kind of ability you have. So me personally, I use voice control. And pictured here, we have a Google Mini, and this over here is an Echo Dot. And these are your voice assistants. So these are the Googles and Alexa devices. And I'm just going to keep an eye on my, I have these all over my home. And I just want to make sure they're not triggering and, sending my house wild, but I think we're good. So these are 2 great ways to control all your smart home devices. So that means you can use, just use your voice, and you can say, turn on the lights, turn off the lights, open the window shades, and turn on the TV. You can boss these little robot assistants around all day, and they will never talk back to you, which is kind of nice.
I find that mine actually do talk back to me, so maybe that's just me.
Sometimes they do.
Yes. So I think it's important for people to understand that it can be as easy as pushing a button, especially for those who are nonverbal. We can have one button that will emulate everything on that TV remote. So as we're discussing all of this technology that we provide, keep in mind that we really try to cater to everybody's needs, and we're very creative. So if you think it can't be done, let us know, and we love the challenge. Also, for those that use eye tracking software and hardware, we can integrate into your existing hardware, but please note that we do not provide the eye tracking hardware itself.
Okay, so we're going to get into the fun stuff now, the actual devices. So pictured here on the left-hand side is a light bulb. This is a smart light bulb, and they are what I would say the bread and butter of the Till program. And these are very simple in what they do. They turn off and on like any other light bulb, and they also dim. And these are special because you can use any of those control methods that we just mentioned. So I'm going to be using voice controls as an example, but always keep in mind that that's just my preferred method. And if you or the person that you're here to learn on their behalf of is nonverbal or uses eye tracking or other controlled methods, those are also available for everything that I'm going to talk about. So light bulbs are great. I don't want to count how many I have in my home because it would hurt me. I'd know how much I spent on them. They're everywhere, but they're free for our Till members. I just have more than most people should have. And I couldn't live without them. And they work in conjunction really well with motion sensors. So to give a great example is I have these lights all over my office. And instead of having to say, turn on the lights every time I enter my office, instead, the motion sensor triggers the lights and turns them on. So I don't need to say voice commands to turn off and on the lights in most of the rooms in my house, which is incredibly convenient for me. My goal is to never have to turn on the lights with my voice again, or have the able-bodied folks in my home use their hands on the switches either. We're gonna get rid of that. We're gonna automate everything. That's my plan. So for other devices, something else we've got are called smart plugs, and these do not work on their own. They work in partnership with another device. And a great example of what these could work with would be a lamp. So what smart plugs do is they turn things off and on. So anything that you can think of that has two states, on or off, will often work with a smart plug. Another great example of this would be a fan. So it was, oh my goodness, it was quite warm today here in Langley, BC. And I think it's only going to get hotter as the summer approaches. We're going to be breaking out the fans soon. And the smart plugs are a great way to control the fans. So with this fan plugged into a smart plug, you can say, turn on the fan, turn off the fan. It's very simple. So you can, if you're getting too hot or you're too cold, you can just adjust the temperature by turning off and on these fans. It's very, very, they're very, very simple, but the ways you can use them are numerous. I've got many all over my home doing all kinds of things. Another important thing that device is automating window coverings. I think it's hard to put a price tag on being able to let natural light into your home. And we have several options for controlling a variety of different types of window covering. So the first one you're seeing here is for blinds with a traditional like tilt wand on it. And these are very easy to fit and attach. I would say maybe 2 minutes for one of our technicians there. It's very simple. Another device we have is for shades with a ball and chain that you would pull to raise and lower the shades. And lastly, I believe, is a device for opening curtains. This is actually a curtain on my front door that you're seeing right here. And there's two of them that work in partnership, and they open the curtains, kind of like a movie theater, I guess, rolling back the curtains, or a big stage production. And they work wonderfully. And I have all kinds of window covering devices all over my house, so that when it's nice and sunny outside, I can let the sun in, or if I want some privacy, I can close the shades. And I can do this all just with my voice. Another part of automating the home that I don't know how I would live without now are smart locks. These are, again, you can use your voice and you can unlock and lock your door. So a great use case for this is being able to admit care aides or caregivers on a specific schedule. So I have care aides that come in quite early in the morning, usually before I'm awake. And using a smart lock, I can schedule permissions for them so that they can unlock the door independently without me needing to do it, like an hour before and after their shift starts. And this is really convenient. And then say that this employee is no longer working for me, I can just revoke that permission. I don't need to worry about keys or whether they've been copied or getting them back or anything. I just press a few buttons and they can no longer use my lock. So that's just one example of how they can be used. But there are locks that you can control with your voice. It's awesome when you don't have the physical ability to do so. These work really, really well. As you've probably noticed so far, many of our technologies work really well in partnership with other technologies. And I think two that really, really work well together are the smart doorbell and the smart lock. So the smart doorbell is like your traditional doorbell. You press the button, it's going to ring the doorbell, what you'd expect. But as you can see, it also has a little camera on it right here in the middle. A little bit freaky if you've never seen one before, but they're becoming so ubiquitous now. They're everywhere. And so what this means is that when somebody comes up to your doorbell and they ring it, you'll maybe get a notification on your phone or on one of your other devices, and you can look and see who's there. And you can talk to them in a two-way communication, or if it's your friend that you're expecting, you can just unlock the door, using your smart lock. So these work really well together. Another important part for controlling your home is controlling your heating devices. So we have a few options for this, but the two I'm showing you here control most methods here in BC. So I've actually used both of these. I used this one in my previous home to control my baseboards. And this is the unit I've got in my current home to control my HVAC system. You know, again, voice control. So if I'm cold and I can turn the temperature way up and warm myself up, or as I'm sure I'll be doing soon in the summer months, I'll be cooling it down. So these are really great. And the ability to control the temperature in the space is invaluable, especially if your disability is prone to being affected by the cold, like mine is. I went out on Monday to give a presentation at a place, and I was only outside for five minutes. It wasn't that cold, but when I finally got ready to give the presentation, my hands were too cold to shuffle through the slides. So it's really important to be able to control, you know, your temperature. You want to be comfortable. So these are the cutest devices we have in our inventory, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise. You can't convince me otherwise. So on the left here, we've got a SwitchBot, and on this guy over here, just going to town on this switch, is a Fingerbot. And they both do very similar things. They press buttons or flick switches, or well, that's it. That's what they do. But think about how many buttons or switches are in your life. They're everywhere, and they don't always have like a smart equivalent, like they're smart light bulbs, right? But there isn't necessarily a smart. This wasn't part of my plan. I don't know. I can't think of any examples, but we'll show you some examples in the next slide of what you can do with them. So here's our SwitchBot, and this is from my home. So here's some examples of the creative ways I've used them. This is actually a suggestion that Ian gave me, and I've implemented it. So this unit here that these SwitchBots are mounted to is my air mattress. And using these SwitchBots, I can control the firmness of the mattress using, you know, voice commands. So these can engage my mattress, which is usually at the foot of my bed where I can't reach it. So I can make the mattress firmer or softer just using my voice. Another great example, again, is this is my computer that I'm using right now. And I have a little SwitchBot unit on it. And you'll see in a second here that it's going to turn the computer on. I think, yeah, there you go. So it's turned my computer on. So this happens every morning when I wake up. I don't have to turn my computer on anymore. It just does it. I don't need to struggle to reach down or ask somebody to do it. It's all automatic. And these are really just, these are two examples. I've got lots of these SwitchBots all over my home, and I have to buy more. I'm out of them. So they're really, really useful. And just think about it. Take an evening and think about where you can use these, because you're going to have something that's unique to you that you want to do and is important to you. And maybe these SwitchBots can help. So something that's very important to us nowadays is how you control your TV and perhaps the sound system attached to it. So pictured here this is a Fire TV Cube. And this device is really, really great for enabling people with physical disabilities to control their TVs again. It's my favorite TV kind of streaming device because it has a really unique feature to it, which it allows you to use your voice to navigate menus. And what I mean by that is, say you had the Netflix app open, you could give it a command to scroll down and it would scroll down, or you could go left and you could. So what I'm getting at is you could browse Netflix using just your voice. And in comparison to other streaming sticks or boxes or like smart TVs, with those, you can use your voice, yes, but you usually need to give it a very specific command and specifically ask for what you want to watch. So I don't know what's on right now. I think the Death on the Nile, that's a new movie, right? So on a traditional smart TV, you'd need to say, hey, smart TV, I want to watch Death on the Nile on Amazon Prime. And that works, but you need to know specifically what you want to watch. I think browsing and scrolling endlessly through Netflix the very modern human experience that we all want to be part of. And this device allows you to do it. On the right-hand side is a device that kind of augments this Fire TV Cube really nicely, in that it allows you to use all kinds of devices. We've really used sound system as an example, but this can control many of your devices with a remote, so like an infrared remote or a radio frequency remote. It can control lots and lots of those devices. So sometimes fans, like a ceiling fan has a remote, or I can't really think of any other examples offhand. Oh, I've got an infrared heater that I'm looking at right now. That's a great example. That's what I'm using mine for, actually, is to control a heater. It's not a smart heater, but I've kind of made it one using this device here. All right, now let Ian take this one. I need a break, guys.
Yeah, no kidding. Good job, Taylor. For this one, this is for people that are a little bit more low tech or old school. If they have a landline and they'd like to phone their caregivers or family members or loved ones, then we do provide these phones. And also something as simple as an attendant call, where you hit the big red button, and it sets off a chime similar to a doorbell on the other side of the house. And this is actually something that I used for a number of years to get back into my house. I had the red button Velcroed to the garage, and I could push it with my hand or my wheelchair, and then it would notify somebody inside to let me in. Mounting is also huge nowadays with all of these smart home devices and phones and tablets. So we just wanted to briefly touch upon that we do have mounting systems for all of your phones and other smart devices. Some people, I don't think we have a slide here, but some people actually mount a like a Nest Mini on their bed using the same equipment. If they find that it's hard for them to project their voice, then this can bring it right up to their mouth, and so they're able to communicate with it.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have a slide showcasing them, but I think that's something that we designed in-house as a mount for our voice assistants, which, as Ian said, will mount near your headboard. If you have perhaps you're softer spoken, or if you have equipment that is creating a lot of noise as well, like a ventilator or a humidifier, sometimes that can drown out your voice, and it can really help to move the voice assistant somewhere much closer to you.
And I might get in trouble for this, but we have a swing array robotic mechanism that we're in the very early stages of prototyping right now. But I know Taylor and I have both tested it, and it's very encouraging for somebody that doesn't want to have their tablet, let's say, in front of them all the time. Then they can use a voice command or a switch to have it mechanically move in front of them when they want to use it.
All right, I'm not going to comment on how many NDAs that Ian just broke, but we're just going to move past it. Just move past it, guys.
We're all friends here, right?
We're all friends, all right? So we've just dumped a whole load of devices on you. That was overwhelming. Unless you're Ian or I, you want it to be easy. You want it to just work. And routines are a great way to do that. And we're going to get into an example. But routines are basically a set series of actions which can repeat when you use a simple command. So the good morning routine is a go-to example. So in my home, if I say good morning to one of my voice assistants, it's going to turn on my lights, open my window coverings, turn on my heat. It's going to call a care aide. It's going to turn on my computer. It's going to open those curtains at the front door that you saw earlier, and probably several other things I'm forgetting. And that was just 2 words. All of that into one command. And there's, you can make endless amounts of routines. So Some other good ones are a good night routine. So maybe doing all those things in reverse, or I'm home, maybe turn on the lights, disable an alarm, or whatever you want really. Or maybe I want to watch a movie. We're going to see a great example of I want to watch a movie right here in this new slide. So this is Ian's home. So what we've got here is we've got a simple command right at the top. So, okay, Google, watch a movie. And that's all that was said. And it's going to do all of these actions here. So if you look very closely, you can see the blinds, they're going to close, turns on the funky lava lamp, turns on the TV, turns on the fireplace, and it dims the lights. So you got some nice movie lights going on, some nice mood lighting, I should say. So all of that, this is a great real world example of routines. It makes things very simple and easy to remember. You don't need to know all of these commands individually. You can just learn your one command and that works perfectly.
And I should mention that this command, it can be anything. Like I know Benson, one of our technicians, is notorious for setting up things like mango or pineapple, which I find those a little bit confusing. But if that's something that is easier to say, then it can be very customizable.
Absolutely. So something I've experienced in my own life recently is I recently started using a BiPAP at night. And for those of you who don't know, you have to wear like some sort of mask on your face, and it provides you with some assisted breathing. It's not completely dependent on it, but it just helps you breathe in. Anyway, so the mask kind of inhibits my ability to enunciate properly. So I have some commands that I use at night when I'm in bed, and normally they work fine, but with the BiPAP mask on, not so great. So I've changed to use some different commands. So if I need to call for assistance at night, my command is purple. That's the word that works. It's very distinct, and it works through the BiPAP mask. So Ian is right. What works for you is not what works for everybody else. Maybe it's mango, maybe it's purple, maybe it's tequila. Use the word that works for you. So, oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so another program that we're very proud of is our automatic door opener program. And this is a separate application, and we do have limited availability rather for this program. So first come, first serve, and different than everything else that we provide. Depending on your finances, then sometimes we do ask for a cost share for the hardware and installation. But if you're not financially able to do that, then this program is free for our members. So if you're interested, go to our website and fill out the other application form that says door opener.
For sure. And to add on to what, yeah, sorry,
Oh
continue.
no, I was just going to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Taylor has one of these in his house, and I'm actually about to. Well, now you're just showing off. Okay, I'm gonna have one in 2 weeks, so I'm really excited to be able to control my voice, or control it by my voice rather. But as you can see in the little video here, you can also have a push button or a multitude of other ways to open and close the door inside and outside of your house.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you for adding that, Ian. That's what I was going to add is we have a variety of voice control methods that we can add on to these units. I just had one of our biomedical technologists, we call them biomeds internally. And I just had one come out and he installed some units into my door openers that allows me to use my voice to open them, which is really convenient. So one of the last things we have to tell you about, but not the very last, is the Simon Cox Student Design Competition. This is a annual competition which invites post-secondary students from across British Columbia to design and build innovative assistive technology solutions. Basically, we ask our peers what they would like to see built. What device is going to help them that doesn't already exist? And we give these ideas to the students and they try and build them. So an example of this is a blanket mover. That was in our competition one of these years. So this was for an individual who wanted to be able to cover and uncover themselves to regulate their temperature. And a student team took this on and they built it. It was two big, or not big, but two robotic arms that kind of just pulled the blankets up and down, and it worked really nice. Other entries have been, oh boy, who won last year, Ian? I can't quite remember.
I should
Last
know,
year's
that's
was,
one
I
of the
remember last year.
judges.
Yeah,
Was
Ian was
it
a judge,
the
but he
table
doesn't
mount?
know who he voted for.
Was
Sorry,
that
Ian?
it? The table mount?
Nope. I know who won last
Ah.
year. It was a team out of the University of Victoria, and they had a client who wanted to be able to carry their own grocery bags independently. And this was not a product that existed anymore. So this team, they took on the project and they fabricated a arm that kind of pivots. So it comes from by turning a lever, or I guess a knob, or whatever worked for that client. The control method that worked for them, it was a rotating wheel, and they rotated it, and the arm would swing from in front of them where they could access these hooks for hanging bags. And then if they turned the control wheel again, it spun the arm and moved the bags to behind the person. So this way they could go do their shopping independently. I realized I really should have included a video of that, because describing it, I don't think did it justice. But the long and short of it is we work with student teams every year, and we try and help them to build these awesome new devices that don't exist already to augment our members and fellow peers, so that they can be more independent. This year's competition is, we have 15 teams from 5 different universities across British Columbia, and we're hosting this event live on YouTube Live on May 7th at 10 a.m. And we invite all of you to attend. I'll be sure to put the link in chat of where you can go to attend that after I'm done speaking here. And we'd love to see you and to celebrate all the hard work that the student teams have put in this year.
I noticed that we are running a bit over time here, so I will be very brief. We Saw Tech is one of our YouTube episode series, so I highly recommend checking it out at youtube.com/technology for living. And there's actually a video of Paul using his door opener. And then something else that is pretty exciting is our We Talk Tech Seniors, which is a different web series that Taylor hosts. And this is a video of Terry LeBlanc using a robotic arm to have a drink. And this is part of our Future Tech episode, I believe. So if you're interested about technology, then please visit our YouTube page.
And that's all for us. So of course, Ian and I would be happy to answer questions at the end. But if you think of something, I'm sure you can send it to Rachel or Ben. But if you want to send it to us directly, you can contact us at technologyforliving.org. And you can also email us at till@technologyforliving.org.
Wow, Taylor, Ian, thank you very much. So many brain cells started firing off as you were talking about your stuff and reading in the chat. Families are planning for their family members. So really, really interesting. We will get to the questions in the chat. So Taylor, Ian, again, thank you very much. Next up, we have Joshua Dahl from CLBC. Josh, thanks for being so patient, and really thank you for being here tonight. We're all yours. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Just give me 1 second here. Let's see if I can do this. Speaking of technology. Okay. So can you all hear me? Can I get a thumbs up from?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, okay, can you see a screen?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Yes, thank you, Paul and Rod, and Ian and Taylor for your presentations. And Taylor, I'm much like you in that I have an Alexa in every room in the house. And I just said her name, so she might wake up and do something at any rate. Yes, so I'm Josh Dahl. I work for Community Living BC, have worked in this sector for almost 25 years now, for government and also for not-for-profit agencies. Grew up having a sister with a diverse disability who has since passed away, and she came to our family through the foster care system. And I have also have a daughter with a diverse ability. So that's a little bit about me. There we go. All right, so what types of supports and services does CLBC provide? Support in learning new skills that help people achieve their goals, support for work or other activities so people can be active in their communities, and help for living in the community, and support making friends and connections with others. That's an important part of all of our lives. So within CLBC's catalog of service, there's several service types. Some exist for these kind of daily activities, and others are focused on what we would say live-in supports, which is what I'm going to focus on today, or this evening rather. And the types of supports for employment, that's actually called employment, and connecting with others and this sort of thing, those are called, can be called skill development or community-based. If you're involved with CLBC, you might already know that, but you might not. And a full list of what those look like is also on our website, Community Living BC. So this is from our what we call a catalog of service, our residential supports. And I'm going to touch just briefly here on something Rachel said at the very beginning about language and about the evolution of language. So I want to acknowledge the word residential might be a bit I don't know if antiquated is the right word, but it could be triggering for some. And so we are people too, of course, and are always looking at language and how we use language. And so we are looking at that word, is that the right word to use? And so I'll just say that. So you'll see that's the overall service, which basically means, where people live, your residential places is where you're living. Supported living is more of the independent type of support, and that's what I'll focus on here in the next few slides. Shared living, home share to the right there is the most common one. Home share isn't for everybody. Not everybody wants home share, and not every family wants home sharing, and that's where somebody is living with a caregiver, or living with, it could be a single person, could be a family, and they're living in that home and they share the home together. It's a model that has had great success, but it's not a model for everybody. Live-in support is where someone is coming into a home and supporting a person in their home, which has been touched on here in other stories we've heard earlier from the presenters. And at the very bottom, in the middle column, in the very bottom, staff residential, that's referring to group homes, which some people do want and do need, based on what's gone on for them in life and their support needs. So supported living has two categories called outreach and cluster living. And I'll break these down. I'm going to break those down further coming up. So the goal of these supports is to provide individuals living independently in the community with assistance in activities for daily living. And this service is available to individuals who own, lease, or rent their own homes. Typically, but not always. We try to work with families and people, individuals, to be as creative as possible in service delivery. So there's a mold, and then hopefully, possibly some flexibility within that mold, if that makes sense. So outreach support. So a supported living environment in which targeted hourly support is provided to individuals through one-to-one or group arrangements. So the support can be provided to people who live in their own space but need occasional support. So examples could include something like with grocery shopping, paying bills, support and connecting with others, or medical appointments, or medication management if someone needed assistance with that. So that's what outreach looks like, or what it can look like. So the person lives in their space, and support comes in and out, touches. It's like a touch point. It could be a few hours, it could be several hours where they're together. And then cluster living, so a supported living arrangement in which ongoing support is provided by an on-site contractor to a group of individuals who have homes in close proximity to one another. So often this has been like in an apartment building where there might be several units on different floors of people who would like supports, and there is a support worker who comes in to that cluster of people and then provides supports as needed, but still allowing for as much independence as possible and is desired. Individuals may receive targeted hourly support through one-to-one or could be a group type focus. Yeah, so that's cluster living. Then, so those are our independent, living options. So using supports or ideas and planning. So what does this look like? Using supports through our service provider, or contracted service provider. So forgive me if I'm preaching to the choir, and you all already know this, but CLBC doesn't deliver any service directly. Government is here, and we are a crown corporation under government, and all of our services are delivered through service providers. And so we work with them as we work with individuals and families in setting up supports. The second one is IF, or individualized funding, and Paul, you were talking about this and you did a really good job, better than I'm going to do, so thank you for that. Sometimes we have people, individuals who are eligible for CLBC who receive the money directly themselves and they manage it on their own. But often it is with the support of family, so where the family is there and the family is supporting in the management of that funding. So keep your facilitator involved in all your ideas and thoughts, the advocates you have in your life, your personal support network, those people you have, make sure you're connecting with them and sharing in the ideas you have, and that you're also sharing those ideas with CLBC, and you're letting them know. So all of this, what I'm saying to you is big picture, and each office and each team in those offices throughout the province is responsible for their own budget and their own allocation of the funding that they have to allow supports to happen. So ideas are great and they're important, but just make sure you're talking them with whoever you're connected with at CLBC, so they know and they can plan with you and work with you together. I just wanted to share that. And I won't go into eligibility for CLBC, but our services are for adults, so 19 and older, who we have two streams of funding that they're called the developmental disability stream, or the PSI. PSI is autism, and FASD is that one stream, and then the DD is the traditional developmental disability, is the wording that is for that stream for funding, and that goes through psychologists and so on. And there are each office has its own team of people that work on eligibility, so you would connect with your local office to start that process, and they would run through with you on all the requirements and paperwork and that sort of thing. And there's also welcome workshops that each community still does. They went remotely, of course, with the pandemic. And the welcome workshops are an introduction to CLBC and our services. It's what I just did in a few minutes here, but expanded over several evenings, and each evening tackles a whole different facet to CLBC and the adult world and planning and this sort of thing. So if you're interested in those welcome workshops, reach out to your local office and inquire and see when they're running. So thank you for your time, and thank you for listening, and that's what I have to share. Yes, Yeah, Ben, back to you. I know questions will be coming in for each of us, so I'll let you and Rachel handle how you want to do questions and that sort of thing. I'll stop sharing here.
Okay, so Josh, the first question is going to be right back at you.
Okay.
There's a couple right away. Somebody has asked, can I, sorry.
No, not that.
Can I access CLBC services if I only have a physical disability?
It's a really good question. No. CLBC services, are for the DD, the developmental disability stream, which is testing that happens for a person before the age of 19. So often in the school system, but not always. I know for our daughter, for example, we paid independently, and we had our testing done, to get the psychologist report. So no, it's not for just for physical disabilities, but many of our individuals do also have, a physical disability as well. Yeah.
Okay, so this is for you and Rod. Can someone get CLBC and Cecil services together?
Do you want to take that first, Josh?
I have seen it, but I'll let you maybe share your thoughts. I think you know more.
So this is my understanding. In 2011, there was a process where the Ministry of Social Development and the Ministry of Health at a high level said, okay, we have to ask people to decide between Cecil and getting supports from CLBC. And people were asked to pick, and they did. Now, having said that, there's a couple of things I want to say. One is, I've looked everywhere high and low for the documentation around that 2011 decision, which I'm quite positive did occur. So it's not that it never happened, but I haven't been able to find any historical paperwork associated with how that decision got made. And I think, but I think you can count on one hand on my Cecil team. There are a small number of people who were quote unquote grandfathered in, and they receive both Cecil and CLBC services. I'm not sure how that decision got made. It was 5 years before my time, but it's all grandfathered. Now, I think that the logic there is that individualized funding through CLBC, and this is where I'll defer to Josh, is the equivalent of a Cecil. And so if you had an individualized funding contract and Cecil, it would be kind of like two Cecils in a sense. But I guess the question that I think people have is, why can I not get other kinds of CLBC services and still get Cecil? And I guess, I wrote myself a note to drill down and get that. I'm going to put an answer to the Ministry of Health next week, and I'm going to get whatever answer I get, I'm going to send it back to Ben Postmus, because I'm not exactly sure, and I don't claim to always understand how the Ministry of Social Development and the Ministry of Health decide to relate to each other, because these are very high level decisions way above my pay grade.
Okay.
But I'll try and find out once and for all.
That'd be good.
And I'll leave it with Ben, and then he can distribute the answer to you folks. And then Josh, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that.
No, Rod, that's fantastic. Thank you.
I would like to say something, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think, this is where confusion actually happens for families, of course, is this particular area. And because every health authority and where you are in the province, it seems to change, even though it's supposed to be offered the same throughout the province. This is where confusion happens again, unfortunately. And, for most places around the province, it's not a choice of going to Cecil or to CLBC. In most cases now, if you are somebody with a developmental disability, you are to go down the CLBC stream.
Yes, that's right.
And so I just want to
there's no choice now. That's right.
Okay, I just want to be clear with that, because I think, in 2011, you're right, there was a choice, but I think now is no longer a choice.
Paul, were you part of that 2011 dialogue? Do you remember who was around the table?
I'm aware of it. I wasn't at the table, unfortunately.
Okay.
I wish I was at the table. I should have been at the table. I think families would have loved me to be at the table, because if I was, I would have still been pushing very hard for both Cecil and CLBC funding to both happen. I think, just that families find it difficult, right? In regards to health understands the physical side in regards to assessing for physical needs. CLBC has a lot of expertise in the area of developmental, and they are both very important components. And I think that what families would like to see is their ability to communicate on both sides to make sure both aspects of someone's life gets looked at. And I think CLBC is doing their best to do that. And I know that there's a system in place, but I know for families it is confusing.
Well, I think it's confusing for everyone because, don't anyone quote me on this, but it's, to me, it seems like a lot of us struggle with, we have to carve up between the health authority and CLBC, what is a developmental disability related need, and what is a health related need, and funding is based on those two things, when really you've got one person with an integrated set of needs. And wouldn't it be nice if we just had an integrated approach rather than a carved up approach? And I don't think you would get anyone in the health authorities who would be opposed to that. But I don't know. And I do know that there's been dialogues about that somewhere, somehow, but I don't know how far away we are from reaching that kind of goal.
Okay.
Right. And just last thing to say is that, my understanding is that the CLBC receives funding from health.
Yes.
It gets transferred over into the CLBC for the overall funding aspect. And I think that's
well, for personal care, yes. And
for personal
CLBC,
care.
yeah, and CLBC is free to put that funding into individualized funding process. It can't go directly to, it can't be direct funding to families. That's one of the rules. So I think that gets confusing and disappointing for families. But if individualized funding approach, like a micro board, can get set up, it can go to that.
Okay. So Rod, this is one more for you, and then we'll slide on up. So is Cecil province-wide, or is it?
It's definitely province-wide. It's Ministry of Health.
Okay.
Believe me, I have a very close relationship with the Cecil managers in the other health regions.
Okay.
And we work very closely together. We have worked very closely together for years now. And our biggest goal, I think, is to have a totally consistent process across BC. So we want it to be like, people are asking, is it the same? So the eligibility is all the same. The time allocation tool is all the same. The contract, we now have a standardized provincial-wide contract that's all the same across all the health authorities. So that's really the direction we're moving. Now, as a high-level organization or program, it's all the same, but there's no, it also comes down to the person who knocks on your door to assess eligibility and assess, like, the eligibility is not such a big deal. It's pretty easy with Cecil to be eligible, but how they count the hours. In Fraser Health, we have one dedicated team for our entire region. It used to be divided up by home health offices. And when I came on was when they consolidated it into a single team. So all the Cecil assessments and reassessments and all that stuff rolls up to me as one manager. And I have one team, and we are, I would say, Cecil experts in our health authority and RI experts. And every 2 weeks we get together, and every time we accept someone into the program, we discuss it as a team. Every time we reassess someone's funding level, we discuss it as a team. And that's to build a common, consistent understanding across our region, because Cecil shouldn't look different from Burnaby to Chilliwack. Okay. Now, my team is the only team that's organized like that. And the other health authorities, is divvied up across the offices. So if you've got dozens of people doing Cecils, some of them may be very experienced, some not experienced at all, but it falls to them. You can imagine how you could get different outcomes.
So are the Cecil managers easy to find, their contact information, Rod?
I can send it all to you if you want.
That'd be great.
It
That'd be
probably
awesome.
would be easier if I sent it to you, Ben,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
just, you know, names and change, they change and all that. But
Yeah.
I'll put you in touch, okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
So
And then
this is for,
that's public information. You can give it to everybody.
awesome.
All right.
For Taylor and Ian. So the devices that you mentioned that require a voice, would they pick up augmentative communication?
Yes.
Yes, that's simple.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's simple. Yes.
Okay. All right. Just a sec here. I'm going up. I'm just going up to make sure I didn't miss anybody. So, what about power outages? I guess it's just like
You're in trouble.
the power's off, right?
Power's
Yeah.
off. Unless you have a backup system.
Okay.
That's electricity. Yeah.
Yeah. Just needed to ask. It was asked, so I'm just passing it
Yep.
on. Okay, I'm gonna
But
jump
I
down
should
here.
mention, one thing to add to that is that when the power turns back on, you don't have to recalibrate your entire home. Everything should go back to status quo.
Okay. All right. Rod, back to you. Is Cecil the same as health services for community living?
No,
Okay.
not at all. Health services for community living, that's another program that I manage. That is like home health for adults with developmental disabilities in the developmental disability stream. So these tend to be folks with more complex healthcare needs, medical needs, but it may be diabetes, maybe seizures, they may be have a lot of mobility challenges, folks that need equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a clinical service. So that's my nurses or occupational therapists, physiotherapists, dietitians, dental hygienists. They go in and they actually work with the people. And they're like clinicians in the community versus Cecil, which is really just about a funding transfer to you as a family to organize personal care. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And HSCL is just for adults with developmental disabilities.
Okay.
Cecil is for anyone with a level of physical disability.
Perfect.
So
Yeah,
that
thank you.
actually might clear up some things here. Would one be able to get that service and still be CLBC funded?
HSCL?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
It's
some of our
HSCL involvement is not tied to funding or anything like that. It's just like, are you CLBC eligible person? And do you have healthcare needs that we can be successful with, like managing diabetes, seizures, wound care, that sort of thing? Yep.
Wonderful. Josh, for you. So what is the difference between outreach support and live-in support? Can you give an example of each?
So outreach support is connecting, wherever the individual is. So it's used more, it can be used in situations where a person maybe is disenfranchised. So is maybe struggling with addictions issues, substance use and this sort of thing, and maybe is more transient in where they are. So an outreach worker can connect with them in the community, different touch points like that. It doesn't have to be like that, but that's just an example of how it could be different than live-in support, which is support going into the person's home, where a person is, and supporting them there. It's interesting, live-in support. It's not something we see utilized a lot, and I don't know exactly why that is. I just know as people and families plan with their facilitator and with CLBC and figure out what supports might look like, it doesn't often end up being chosen. So it's a really good question, the kinds of questions like that. I know our website does give some context as well. I might expand on that a bit further.
Okay. So I'm going to call the questions right there. I don't want to keep people longer than the 2 hours. I want to really thank you guys for coming here. One thing though, if folks do have a question that comes up, send them to Rachel and I, and then we will make sure that they go to the right person and we'll get an answer back, because sometimes they don't come in the question until we log off, and then you go, I should have asked that, right? It happens all the time. And so I know these guys are great for getting back to us to pass back to you. So Rachel's thrown some our emails in the chat there. And so here again, here's where I want to thank Paul Gauthier for coming tonight, Rod McDonald, Josh Dahl, Ian Price, Taylor Danielson, for taking your time out to come and chat and share with families. I mean, almost all the folks on here, we're all moms or dads or a family member, right? And we want to get as much knowledge as we can so that we can support kiddos to have some sort of independent living. And you guys are all great examples of doing it, supporting it, and supporting FSI. You know, we really are thankful that you are great supporters of us. You know, I got to mention again that each one of you groups have been on our Thursday nights, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have each of you back again in the next 6 months to a year, because our audience is always evolving. We're getting new faces in here, and the information is so real, it's relevant, and it's so helpful for families. So,
well, thanks for having us. I think we all appreciate it, and we all enjoy it too. It's nice to be able to speak to families directly. We don't often get that privilege.
yeah, super cool. There you are, folks. There's all our guys.
All of our big thank yous.
Yes.
Also, Ben and I wanted to also make sure everybody was aware for our shameless plugs. As Ben just said, every Thursday night we're here. We've had everybody on this panel except for Josh. We had previous CLBC individuals come in and speak to us, but now we have Josh with us, and we've had them all on before, and we'll have more. We'll have them back, and we have other options too for housing that comes up. So every Thursday night, we also have a Facebook page, and we'll be sending all of these links out to everybody as well. And next week, Ben, we have
Stephanie Allen, CEO from BC Housing, who unfortunately had a family issue last week and couldn't make it. So she's coming on next Thursday night. The link will be sent to you. It's going to be our regular link back on again. And Josh is also going to be coming on in the coming months to sit with us. He's got he's got multiple hats and multiple stories to share with us about housing and supports. And Erica Sagert from BC Nonprofit, who Rachel and I tried to step in for last week, she'll be back. And we've got a whole bunch of other really cool sessions planned and stuff that we're working on too. And we're going to take you right through to the fall and into the winter with these sessions. So yeah, and so I want to thank everybody for coming. As always, thanks, Rachel. She does a wonderful job here, firing stuff in the chat, letting people in, co-hosting, chatting with everybody. And thanks to all of you for coming.
Thanks, folks. Have a good day.
Thanks for joining us on our explorations through FS. And everybody have a great week. And
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Make sure you check out all the wonderful things we're doing this month.
Ben, you made me blush. Got me speechless.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.